The Chicago Bears complete a preseason sweep, smoking the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City to close out a 4-0 record that, well, I hope it bodes well, Nick, but I guess we'll just have to find out later. Caleb didn't win any of those games. But anyways, great show from the Bears last night. Got more news of an edge rusher move today, acquiring Seahawks edge rusher Darrell Taylor. The 53-man roster is just around the corner, and we're here to talk about all of it. Stay tuned as Nick and I go through everything on this episode of Bear With Us. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Bear With Us, a Chicago Bears podcast hosted by yours truly, Robert Schmitz, editor-in-chief of the Bears blog, alongside my co-host Nick Whalen of Football Guys. And Nick, where do we start? Here's where we'll start, okay? You ever watched Colin Cowherd? Ever?
Some actually. My buddy was on his podcast. Derek
amazing.
Brown, little shout out to you. Yeah,
that's legit. Okay, so I love Colin Cowherd. Whether you may know this or not, he is pretty much my inspiration for podcasting at all, because there's something about a man talking for at least 25 hours on air every single week where I'm like, that is a grind. You go, Colin. And he does a segment called Where Colin Was Right. And I've been talking about the Bears trading for a defensive lineman for months, and this isn't that trade. This is too small. The 6th round pick for Darrell Taylor is really interesting. I really like the move. That's where I want to start, if you're cool with it. Sure. But it's not the home run move that might still be in the cards for Ryan Poles and the Bears, as now, curiously enough, instead of signing Yannick Ngakoue, they actually keep as much cap on hand as possible while still adding an edge rusher. So what do you think of the player?
I mean, to me, it's move, because I mean, it's $3.1 million. It's a 6th round pick, not this year, but next year. So really it's like a 7th. I mean, it means nothing. He's an average to above average pass rusher, kind of in NFL career. Look, he makes some boneheaded plays. Look, he had some off the field stuff in college, I think. Not good against the run. Honestly, reminds me a lot of Yannick Ngakoue / Jacob Martin, and it's a pass rusher. It's fine. To me, actually, I think that the bigger thing behind it, Robert, is what does it mean with who you keep on the 53, but also it might help you put DeMarcus Walker in that D tackle in a rotation, which I think is what you call those, what is it? Those, when you get sweat, there's what does Poles call it? Where you have like a multiplier. The multiplier of this move is Walker can go inside.
I think so. Not to mention, I feel like NFL teams work best when you're able to send pass rushers in waves. And so you needed a 4th pass rusher that you thought would do anything. Let's just start there, right? Yeah. And now it does make me wonder if the Bears are considering adding an extra defensive end. I've seen most teams keep 4 defensive ends, but kickoff rules are very different. And linebacker types, running back types, and 250-pound defensive end types are more effective on kickoff than they've literally ever been. And so part of me wonders whether we're looking at a 5-deep edge rusher room, because there are going to be pieces of projecting the 53, I feel like, Nick, that are just different than they've ever been. Because the core part of special teams in kickoff coverage is just really different. And that means that maybe we see different guys get added for different reasons. But I think that, frankly, look, I could act like I'm over the moon. To me, at least, I see Taylor as a spark plug option that I love the fact that he's 26, as opposed to trading a 6th round pick for Dan Feeney. For what it's worth, Nick, it is a 2025 2nd round pick. Your brain is telling you that's next year's. It's not next year's anymore.
Oh, it's not.
It's this year's.
Oh, I'm wrong. Yeah, you're right.
But still, instead of Dan Feeney, who's a replacement level guy who comes over at 30 and still can't snap a football in the right direction, this is a guy where he comes into Chicago. We know he can't stop the run, but we also know that he can get after the passer a little bit, even if, like you're saying, he's been caught up with some of the most meme-worthy plays in recent football. For those who don't know, this is the guy who's in that legendary clip. If you haven't seen it, you should. Where the Seahawks, a DB picks off a pass and he jumps onto the field from the sidelines to try to block for his teammates. I don't know what came over him. I
I
don't know.
I think he thought he was down, so he came out to celebrate, and then he's like, "Oh," he doesn't actually block anybody. He's like, "Oh no!" But then he also hits Jared Goff well after the play, not even seeing the ball.
That was so
I
funny.
mean, there's multiple things. I mean, here's kind of where I see it. I mean, it's a hedge because what I see from this move is multiple things. One I see is Jacob Martin is still not healthy, and it means he's probably not going to be healthy for the
Probably
start of
not.
the year. And you look at the rest of the room, you have Booker, again, super young. You have Hardy, some people like him, super young. And Dominique Robinson, who's bulked up into this kind of more, he's like a run stuffer and now because he's 6'5, 273, at least when he started camp. And these other guys are like 250, 24. I mean, Hardy's 240. So to me, I think like what it does is it hedges a guy who's had NFL sacks for multiple years where you don't have that from the rest of the backups. So it's like, okay, well, this is at least a guaranteed some pass rush, and no, you have to put all this pressure on Booker or these other guys to get it done.
I'll tell you another thing about Taylor that I think is interesting, Nick. Everything in the NFL comes down to expectations. Wouldn't you agree? If Valus
Oh yeah.
Jones was UDFA, he's exciting, but he's not. He's a third round pick. So a
Mhm.
lot of people hate him for a multitude of reasons. Daryl Taylor comes over to the Bears as a former second round pick. A second round pick being a designated pass rusher that doesn't play more than 50% of defensive snaps is kind of a bummer, right? It's a pick that just didn't work out the way that you wanted it
Yep.
to, and now you're not settled at defensive end. Well, for Chicago, this is now a sixth round pick that averages 7 sacks a season.
Mhm.
So sacks are valuable. I mean, people have paid $12 million like Yannick Ngakoue last year
Yep.
just to try to get a slice of that 8 sack a season pie, even though you know you don't get any of the like run stuffing that might come with a better player. So I'm really interested and quite upbeat about this because I agree with you. Taylor only does one thing. This is a hedge. You could even call it a stopgap, but it's a young stopgap with a potential chance to hold on to him if he plays well. And this guy is a stopgap at doing the only thing that your defense can never have enough of. And that's get after the
Yeah.
passer, especially on big third downs.
Mhm.
I see this as a way. You talk about Demarcus Walker. That's totally possible. Don't get me wrong. Like, that's definitely an option. But also, this is a way to have Booker and now Taylor get involved without Booker needing to do something
Yes.
because you don't
Mhm.
now need Booker to be a 5.5 sack guy right out of the gate. If he is, amazing. If he's not, that's okay, rookie. Just
Mhm.
go
The
at your pace.
Yeah, the other thing that's like really hidden here is like when you trade for a guy that hasn't really panned out somewhere else, you like we need to know more about this guy. Like why hasn't this worked? And one person has known him for almost his entire NFL career, and it's Shane Waldron. He was in Seattle with him. So, like, again, opposite side of the ball. But they're like, hey, Shane, what do you think about this guy? Like, oh man, he's annoying in practice because he gets after it, or whatever. Or he's not good, right? Now, to make this move, again, it's not a huge move, but this guy's making the roster.
Yep.
You're giving up a pick for him. Shane Waldron had to sign off on this. So I think that's another part of this too, where if you want to have a little comfort with it, and again, he's not tiny. He's 6'4", 267, 33-inch arms. So that he's not, again, I keep referring to Daniel Hardy. Daniel Hardy 6'2", 240. So like there's something there
Reportedly,
to him.
reportedly, his weight is way off. People speculate he might not even be 250. That
Okay.
there's
I
quote
think this was the combine is what I pulled from.
It's the combine. At least the people in Seattle that I read some stuff from, because I haven't had a chance to get to his tape yet. We'll do that later. But
Mhm.
I read some stuff from some Seattle folks that said that there's no way he's at 265. He may not even be 250. And that's part of why he can't set the edge at all. Which the only piece to this that it has me wondering about, dude, is I worry about Hardy. Hardy's been singled out a couple times by the Bears staffers, but this guy sounds a lot like Booker. Booker is making the team. That's not a
Yes.
question. He's
Mhm.
been a preseason starlet and he was drafted. You want to talk about having every box ticked in your favor? Austin Booker's making the team. There's no question. So let me ask you this, Nick. You got two choices. Let's say it's a given they're keeping a fifth edge, which we don't know yet. You got two choices. One is a now 265-pound edge rusher that, if you lose Montez Sweat, might start purely because he can set the edge at least a little in Dominique Robinson. The other is Daniel Hardy, a workhorse who's at 245 and plays like he's at 245. Do you need three of the same guy, or do you try to get Hardy to the practice squad again?
I think I would. Well, Dom Robert was up to 273 per his press conference. So to me, I would go with that move and try Hardy in the practice squad again. I know people are upset, but you have to remember last year. Okay, we just went through this. Terrell Lewis was flashing in
Stud,
camp.
star.
Oh my
Looked like a
gosh.
young Khalil Mack, right?
Right,
Big
yeah, I
wears
mean, he's gonna
52.
be it, but then also you got Travis Gibson, who's having a good camp. They both weren't even making the roster because they got rid of Gibson early, and then Lewis was the one that they cut for Khalil Kareem, who just got cut, so for this move. So, I don't think that we like a lot of light ends anyway. So, to me, I think that you can't pick all of them. Don't The only exception is, and we'll talk about this, getting to the 53, there was a part of me that almost kept 6 edges. Robert.
Ooh.
So we'll get into that, but that's the only way is if you're like, well, this is better value than what we have right now.
The other complicated part about talking about the 53, and we will get there, is that with Zach Pickens reportedly injured, I
I
think I
know.
heard that just recently, the
Yep.
Bears are rocking two defensive tackles. And so there's obviously, I would assume, not a trade, but a cut claim. I mean, I think it's one of the more under talked about stories in football right now that the replacement level nose tackle can play ball. I mean, it's so funny, right? Mike Pennell was a scrap heap acquisition by the Kansas City Chiefs in their Super Bowl run. The dude was like the third best defensive player on the field in the Super Bowl.
Mhm.
And that's not to say that Pennell's the guy, probably just a set of good matchups there against San Francisco. It's more to say, Nick, that when you go and you grab the best edge rusher that's available after cuts, that player, let's say, comes in at like a D minus. There's a C plus nose tackle that's gonna get cut this weekend.
Yeah. Well,
And
in division, Robert, Tonga got claimed by the Vikings and was like their starter for a year, I think a couple
yes,
years ago, and was like solid. It's like that's a guy that was a 7th round pick that the Bears like, no, doesn't fit anymore. And they liked him.
yep. And so I imagine that the 53 is gonna get extra complicated because there will be, I think, a little bit of bottom of the roster claiming going on. And
Yep.
I'm really interested to see whether that impacts the wide receiver room. But first, we should probably pay some lip service to the game that just happened last night, right?
Well, can I so I don't know if you saw, I got a little heated today
Did you get a little heated on Twitter?
on X, okay? Because there's so many people that said going 4-0 the preseason is meaningless. There's no value. And I just disagree flat out. Because that's like saying you'd rather go 0-4. Is it? I mean, one is better than the other. And it means that your backups are talented. They made plays. You want to see guys make plays. And your backups, generally, I mean, some starters played, obviously, but your backups are more talented than other backups, which means when there's injuries, rotation needs to come in, poor play, whatever, those guys stepping up are better than other ones. And then people are like, well, but the Lions went winless after they won undefeated in some preseason. That means that their starters sucked. Okay. Can we just be honest? Like, if you don't win a game, your starters aren't good. I'm just saying that I think that going 4-0 and kind of in the fashion that they did, is telling that they have some good now depth and value in these backups that I think can make a difference. And to me, those small differences help with, maybe 1 or 2 wins a year.
I think it's funny, right? Because I'm with you and I'm with all of the people out there that would say something like, well, yeah, but winning the preseason is not the same thing as winning in the regular season. Yeah, no duh. Congratulations.
Yep.
What very astute of anybody that would say that. Where it gets weird is that the Bears have been blowing teams out. I mean, it's not that they're winning by the skin of their teeth because Austin Reed is piping balls down the seams or something like that. The Bears starters I believe, have a positive point differential the entire preseason. The Bears' second string has a positive point differential on the entire preseason. The Bears' third string has a positive point differential. And I think it's only when they get to the fourth string that last night's game against the Chiefs evens it the other way to where that's the group that finally gave up more points than they scored. Dude, I don't know if this matters. Like, I think it matters, right? But I'm more saying
Mhm.
I don't know if it's going to be impactful. But at the same time, I would tell you that margin of victory says that there's something to the way that the Bears are playing football right now. And as much as I hate saying it, because the next thing I'm about to say, dude, is a little grim. Last night was also a great reminder of why you don't tempt fate and play the starters during a short week. Because the Bears also suffered way more injuries than they've suffered the entire rest of preseason action combined. And you definitely don't wish it on the bottom half of the roster, but you're
Right.
glad that the starters are safe.
Mhm. Yeah, that was one thing, like, late in that game, Tyler Scott's out there returning kicks, and, like, if Bayless makes the roster, which we'll talk about, he's out there getting carries in the 4th quarter. I'm like, "What are we doing? Like, why are they" like, I mean, that was one thing that kind of went through my mind, Robert, when we're talking about running backs. Like, Ian Wheeler was the 1st or 2nd running back getting carries, and then it was Bayless, and I'm like, "Well, is that how they have them stacked in the room? Because, like, I don't know why he's out there." Jonathan Owens was getting snaps late, and I'm like, "Why is he
Let's
your 3rd
talk
safety?"
about that.
Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't tell you if this is the truth. Let's speculate for a moment, right? It was interesting to me that in yesterday, whatever, the game before this one, Saturday's game,
Mhm.
Gerald Everett got so much work. I'm not saying that that's not something that we could see in the regular season. Anything's possible. But what an intriguing guy to get the ball that often, given that you've got Keenan Allen, Robadunze, DJ Moore, and a tight end being paid 2.5 times whatever it's being paid.
Right.
So why Everett? Then I see Tyler Scott getting the ball as much as he did in the next game, and Velus Jones getting as many reps as he did. And part of me wonders, Nick, whether the Bears were trying to get some of these guys across the roster reps as the first reserve, if that makes sense.
Oh,
This
okay.
is the Kmet's out. What do you got?
Yeah.
Or in Scott's case, hey, you're the number one receiver. What does that mean to you?
Mhm.
And Velus' case is much more obvious, right? You've never done this before. We got to get you game reps where we can get you game reps.
Yep.
And in Jonathan Owens' case, the same would apply, where it's like, hey, everybody's down. You're the main safety. What
Mhm.
are you doing? And
Well, he also missed time too. Remember, going over
right.
repairs.
So I wonder, what do you think about that? Like, do you think it's that Tyler Scott is below the rest of the guys that they have, like Dante Pettis, et cetera, on the depth chart? Or do you think it's that they're trying to get some younger guys and some key depth pieces work where they can get it to them?
Man, that's because me as a coach, I just don't want injuries because, like, getting them work, and again, is it meaningful on the 4th with Osterreed throwing you the ball? I don't know. But also, you want to get their confidence up and seeing what they can and can't do. There's also the showmanship part, Robert, of like, let me see and put this stuff on film, which I think can be kind of fun too. So I think there's a lot to it. Actually, I don't know if you want to. I have a couple things from Hard Knocks, man. Before we get into the 53, are you cool with that?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. So, um, I was excited to see a lot of Tyson Bagent. Okay, like I'm I'm a big fan. It's such a cool story. Like now looking back, right? Because we were, I mean, Robert was breaking down his film. Made a YouTube video out of it and stuff. But like I, because I'm a quarterback coach, like that's what I've done for 14 years, y'all. So when he's there talking with Flus, everyone's like, "Oh man, he's all wired in." I'm like, I mean, that's what you do all the time. Like you're always that's just like the normal, but I'm glad people see that and seeing where he's wired. But he is Bajan overall has a sense of confidence about him this year. And he talks about that in the meeting room. He's like, dude, I'm just so much more prepared. I know what's gonna happen now, even if it's a new offense. So I like that stuff. Um, his dad, hilarious. I'm glad that they got that in there. Um, I I saw a documentary of his dad as an arm wrestling, like, champion off on, like, Netflix, like, years ago, Robert, okay?
Dude's a
And
dog.
I saw Tyson. like as a little kid before. I knew he was like this football player. So that was cool. But also the last thing about Tyson is this: you asked me last week, would I take a fourth? And I said no. Then I said, would I take a third? I said yes. I take it back. I would. It'd have to be a second or higher.
Man. So part of me thinks that we are dropping anchor and saying we love this guy because I do think that at the end of the day, if Tyson has the value of a third round pick, I would be shocked, right? That's not to say, to be clear, Bears fan, that
Mhm.
Tyson's not better than a lot of third rounders. That's a given. It's more to say that do you really expect anybody to offer a second round pick for Tyson Bagent? Ooh, I super doubt it. Much more likely he plays 4 years in Chicago after his RFA season, hits the
Yep.
open market, and gets himself a nice little Matt Flynn deal or something like that if
Mhm.
he can sustain momentum. But also, Nick, I'm just going to say the part that I think it can be easy to not talk about. There's always a chance that Caleb Williams is going to separate his shoulder on some fluke play. And if you
Exactly.
need Tyson to start 6 games for you, the idea he might get you 3, maybe even 4 of those games is worth it enough to keep him. We don't
Yep.
need to rush out the only or the other young quarterback on the roster just because we think Rippon can hold water. Let's not forget, I think Rippon threw for under 100 yards across an entire start just last season. So you
Well,
can't
and he's cheap. Bajan's so cheap. When you
exactly
think about hey, we want to make this Super Bowl window with Caleb. You can save money here to maybe make that move for Jonathan Allen, which I know is like your favorite move to mock up. But if you have Andy Dalton for 5 million as your backup quarterback, that's 5 million you can't put somewhere else. So that's
right.
another part of it.
It's the same with Jacoby Brissett and Drake May, right?
Yep.
You got to pay
Yep.
Jacoby Brissett decent money, and so having Tyson Bagent allows you to maximize the amount of cap that you can push towards not the quarterback, and that's a really positive thing. I think Tyson's always going to be a character. He's just the kind of guy who was born to be a character, right?
Yep. Yep.
Charismatic dude. It's not shocking that he looks as comfortable as he does, and I do think he looks pretty comfortable. I think
Yeah.
his accuracy is a little hazy sometimes. Every once in a while, he'll put the ball on the wrong shoulder in ways that I don't expect from a guy like Tyson Bagent. But you also get a lot of these plays. My favorite recently are the 2 that we've got to Travis Homer, where we can talk about those if you want to. They're very minor footnotes. Both plays to Travis Homer are not that easy. The first ball being last week, where Tyson puts the ball pretty much right on his face, but the ball's a little quick on him. This
Yep.
last one, I don't think the ball is that fast on Homer, but it's a little behind him. But it's
Yes.
also the NFL. There's a point where, to me, Nick, quarterback is hard enough where, yeah, I want my skill position player to be able to catch a ball like that on
Hmm.
4th down or running into the end zone. I want you to be able to make a play. And so there's got to be, I think, some both and, right? Like
Hmm.
you've seen all the Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson highlights. I know I don't have to explain this to you, Nick, but yes, a bad throw is sometimes the best throw you got. And if your
Yes.
receiver can go get it, that's enough in the NFL. And so to me, Tyson Bagent does a very good job of giving guys enough to go make a play on a football. And that's why they won the Raiders game, right?
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
it's why they were so tight in the New Orleans game. Another great example. Last year, rookie season, Tyson Bagent puts about 3 feet too much air under a throw that's into the corner to Cole Kmet in the Saints game. So to recap, because I felt like I stumbled through that, this is that deep ball that Tyson throws to Cole in the corner, and it's too far. In fact, it's probably going to be an interception if the neutral situation plays out because it's
Mm.
drifting too close to a corner that's over the top of him. And Cole Kmet just reaches over the guy's face and catches it anyways. Because sometimes, dude, for as much as we want to make football an art and not a science, sometimes you just give your guy a shot at a play and he
Yes.
comes through for you. And
Hmm.
I think Tyson does a very good job at managing. I think he basically does a great job of cutting down on negative plays, which goes a long way in making an offense successful. Nick, I was shocked. I don't want to bring this up more than I have to. I was shocked the other night on stream. I looked up 2023 passers by sack rate. And I don't know if you've ever done this. The top 15 quarterbacks in sack rate is like a running list of the 15 best quarterbacks in football. I was shocked. I've never seen this. Where
Hmm.
like you want to go yards per game, that's not
Yeah.
always the best quarterbacks in football. You want to go yards per attempt, that's not always the best quarterbacks in football. But this was like, granted, it was sort of out of order. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, they don't take any sacks. One of the
Yeah.
only quarterbacks that was legit good that also takes a lot of sacks is Lamar. And even he takes like 6.7% sack rate instead of, the old 12% that we went through.
Yeah.
Tyson is a 3.8% sack rate.
Hmm.
So he stays out of sacks. He gets the ball out of his hand, even if it's inaccurate sometimes. And he's got the legs to go run for a
Yeah.
touchdown when he needs to.
Mhm.
That was
They're
a very
they're drive killers, for being honest. Like that's why. I mean, in the I referenced before, I got Warren Sharp's preview, and in there he talks about it too. Like when the Bears didn't have a sack or a penalty on offensive drive, they were top 10 in offense last year. It's a huge differential. One other guy I want to talk about is Torrey Taylor. Um, in the games, Robert, I mean, I don't, maybe it's just me, practice, whatever. He's so much bigger than Cairo Santos.
so much bigger.
I'm like, how does he bend down in his knees? Like, how does he have flexibility? Because Cairo's just so much smaller than him. But his quote I thought was awesome. He's multiple quotes I thought that were good, but he's just a really humble guy, which I like. Um, he they had talked about, what do what do you want to do for, it was something in his press conference. He's like, honestly, if people don't know my name, that means I'm doing my job and things are going well. Like he doesn't want to have all the shine. I did like how he made fun of Caleb. He's like, "Hey man, what's up with these punts? I thought I wasn't going to be doing this." Like, good for him. Like, also think of it, like that just means that I think Caleb's likable. Like, I can pick on this guy. He's the number one pick. He's got all this, he had the 25 million. Torrey's a fourth round pick from Australia, but I can still pick on this guy. Like, that's good, I think, camaraderie that you can do that. And that's how a team should be.
It is, right? And I think that it's good that whatever piece of Caleb has fostered that, it's a good thing he has fostered that. Another thing that I'll tell you, Nick, that I think is intriguing, this is more a grander preseason scope, is this team feels like the team we're seeing on Hard Knocks, right? Hard Knocks is a reality show. We've watched
Mhm.
enough reality shows between your family and my family. Reality shows are just not always showing you reality, right? Plenty of times it's manufactured drama or they're
Oh,
playing
yeah.
this, that up. They're editing something blatantly. The team right now feels very authentically positive. And one thing I think is intriguing, right? When I've looked at greatness in the past, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but you tell me if I'm wrong here, right? When you look at Patrick Mahomes, when you look at Justin Herbert, when you look at Josh Allen, when you look at Michael Jordan, when you look at LeBron James, Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, name whatever sport you want. Generally, when you find greatness, you find a player so good that they could pursue the game with a naive love for the game, and nothing ever told them that they couldn't do that, right? There's an element of Justin Fields and what he had to go through that is very professional and very adult. He met his limits. He has to learn to deal with his limits, to work on his own shortcomings and attempt to overcome them. That's very difficult, right? Whereas
Mhm.
Caleb, oh, if I just tie up couple little things here and there, we start scoring touchdowns. In the Bears
Mhm.
case, they're like, hey, as soon as we stop committing penalties, we're going to put the ball in the end zone. And so far through this preseason, they have simply done that. None of the quarterbacks have played poorly. The offense
No.
has looked very methodical, top to bottom. Guys are making plays up and down the roster. And then all of a sudden, Nick, just when you thought things are going south, just when somebody muffs a punt out of nowhere, DeAndre Carter just lets himself get blocked into the ball. No big deal. Reddy Stewart's just going to jump a pass, and we're going to keep a 0 on the scoreboard. There's an element to what you're talking about. This is tying into exactly what you're saying. Torrey
Mhm.
Taylor chiding his quarterback on the sidelines. Nobody seems worried that this is going to go wrong. Nobody seems as tense.
Yep.
You've got to have been in locker rooms. I know I have, Nick.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody knew it was going badly. Everybody knew that we were 1 to 2 plays away from something being really wrong and
Mhm.
major problems. The Bears don't look like that. They look relaxed. They look light.
Mhm.
It's the preseason. Maybe there's an
Mhm.
element of that.
Well,
but they just
I
keep succeeding.
well, like, there's a sense of confidence when you have, I mean, a great player like you were talking about on your team or a group of, right? You're like, "Okay, not as much high pressure on this." A dumb example of this, Robert, is you've seen Friday Night Lights, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Wait, are
It's
we
just like,
talking about the
"Hey,"
goated movie or are we talking about the TV show?
the
Okay,
movie.
good.
Yeah. Remember when they're messing with Mike Winchell, the quarterback, like, "Mike, you just gotta get the ball to Booby. Like,
Yes.
you're good. Like, just
You
get the
want to
snap.
win? Put
You give it to the
Booby
running
in,
back.
man.
You're good, man." You know what I mean? Like, and there's comfort in that. Like, I've been on teams that have had great players, and honestly, you can just ride the great players, but it's not a there's a pick, the game is over. Oh my gosh, because I've seen some of that stuff, and you see the bad body language and the test, like fighting on the sidelines and just tense, like it's just not great. And I thought you were going to go into this part of it, which we could, the greatness, right, or confidence in Tory Taylor. The
Yeah, there's that
Shane
too.
Waldron talking him up, like, in the you just have to talk about the punter when you're in the offensive room or quarterback room. He's like, "Guys, have you seen Taylor punting?" He's like, "He's got every club. He's got it spinning this way or that way." I think that's the other thing that's fascinating. People don't know that about punting. It's not just about, and I've coached up punters quite a bit, honestly. I think it's kind of a fascinating art but my small expertise is we're we're angling it and we're spiraling it right and getting good form and one not getting it blocked and getting it off and then getting a solid punt. But man, they're kicking off of points. They're getting drop shots on it. They're getting the spins. And when they're like it's in the inside the five all the time, you talk about like, hey, things aren't going well. Oh man, we got a punt, and now you got that guy doing that and long fields. Like, talk about confidence, Robert.
Ooh, Nick, I want to really spit on this because I think you're going to like this. So, I love the new kickoff rule. This is going to make sense. I think it's fun. I've seen a lot of people talk about how it's a confusing melee, and I'm like, good. I mean, the kickoff became this ceremonial commercial break
Yep.
where they would
Yep.
come back for the kickoff, you kick it through the end zone, and you went back to commercial. Whereas
Mm.
now with the kickoff, yeah, there were a couple moments in last night's game where the Chiefs returner broke through the Bears line. There was another moment where the kicker screwed it up and didn't get the ball far enough. And the Bears got the ball at the 40. And
Mhm.
so here's my thing, Nick. If average field position, because of this new kickoff, comes up, right? And the average field position encroaches on the 30. Maybe we even get to the end of the season and it's like 30 and a half yards. Then every yard you get from your punter is that much more important than it used
Massive.
to be. Because,
Yes.
I mean, let alone the fact that every single time that Tory uncanned a punt from inside his own eight or inside his own end zone, and with the help of a penalty, flipped it back to the opposing 20. But even when you're able to get an extra 10 yards, that's a full 3 down series that the opposing offense has to earn away from you. And only then do they get back to where Miller Gill would have put the ball on average. And so I think, to your point, it's hard to explain how good Tory is. I can only say that when I was watching him in the Senior Bowl, I went, this guy is different. I've watched a lot of punters kick a lot of footballs, especially out here in Mobile, and this guy is something else.
Well,
You,
they called him a weapon.
he was the whole Iowa offense. They drafted the
Mhm.
entire Iowa offense with the 4th round pick. One.
Yep.
Uh, it's it's funny looking at Taylor because, like you're saying, I think that there's a whole lot of people that are just going to giggle at how much we're talking about the dadgum punter. But there are going to be games. There are going to be games
Mhm.
where Caleb and the offense are just not going to find anything. And they're going to get a total of 17 points on the board. And having your punter be able to push the ball back the other way. The other thing that we've seen so far, Nick, is at one point, the Bears punted from the 40, if you remember. They had the first down yard was like the 41, the line of
Yep.
gain. They got the ball to the 40 after the punt to Everett. And from there, Tory lofted a high ball with hang time that bounced at the 14 and dribbled down to the 12. And
Mhm.
that's massive.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
those kinds of punts can net 30 yards when you just
Yes.
sucker it into the end zone.
Mhm.
Or you leave it short, it gets returned, and now the ball's at the 28. And so
Mhm.
these little things, it's the preseason. I get it. Shut up, Robert. But also, the in real football games, that is, I believe, the legitimate difference between a drive where you can turn the opposing offense over because you force them to press versus an offense that walks onto the field knowing, hey, we only got to get 2 first downs. We got 2 full minutes to do it. We're going to be fine, guys. You know what I mean?
Mhm. I've got 2 other small things. I'm with you on that. I got 2 other small things. One's with Torrey and one's with Flus. And again, this is just this is how I look at the game. I think Robert's the same way. Like when you're film guys, I'm a coach, but like these details, like I'm like, man, this is it. Okay, that game wet, right? From Hard Knocks, right?
Yep.
It showed the rain, all that kind of stuff. And I talked about this just from watching the game. Torrey put gloves on. Okay, you guys watch him on the sidelines of Hard Knocks. He's got his gloves on, right? He gets a towel and he's just standing on the sideline like this with a towel over his gloves because him as a holder and a punter doesn't want his hands to get wet for whenever he has his opportunity. That's a guy locked in and cares. I mean, I'm telling you, like that is just beyond professionalism and respect everyone else. He's like, I need to do my job as best as I can all the time. And kind of when I'll tie something into this in a second. The other small thing was Falus threatening to kick someone off the field if they got into a fight and conditioning for the scrimmage. I like that one. When we're talking about these 53-man rosters, Robert, Patrick Scales has been injured. And he hasn't been there, I think, since the Hall of Fame game. Do they keep this other long snapper because he has rapport with Taylor, with Santos, with everything for weeks now?
I have to think, if you're asking honestly, that they keep Scales because they're not worried about the other guy getting claimed. And then they just practice squad the other guy and pull him up on game days if Scales isn't ready. I don't know, though. I have no idea.
Can I let me give you a scenario or a point that might tip the scales. So if someone is on your roster on week one, active roster, their salary is guaranteed for the year. So when we're going through these projections, I took that in mind and I was like, with who I wanted to keep. And I honestly, I kept more cheap guys because that happens a lot often. After week one, a lot of these like fringe guys get back on the rosters and it's whoever's active on game day gets the game checks
Right.
versus we're going to pay all of, let me look here. I'm at the bottom here. Like Larry Borum got hurt. Okay. I know that one, but he's 3.199 million or Travis Homer, 2.1 million. Like those guys could come back, but it's going to be a little bit cheaper. So Scales has been a veteran for years. Is he one of those guys where it's like, hey, we're going to go with this other kid week one, and then afterwards we can bring you back when you're healthy because it's going to be cheaper for us?
I have no idea. But that's a really interesting question. I'm glad you're asking it because those are exactly the kinds of questions that are going to get asked this week, one way or another.
Yep.
The I'll tell you one thing. It's funny as we talk about Hard Knocks. So we got these reports of the Bears doing well at Bengals joint practice. I am stoked that the Bears did so well at Bengals joint practice,
Mhm.
especially because it looked like some of the throws that Caleb made were, let's call them very NFL type throws. Tight windows, fitting the ball into the end zone and making it work. It was so much rainier than I think reports had implied that it was, that I'm not surprised that Joe threw the 3 picks and potentially more that people said he was. That's not Joe's weather,
Did,
right?
did you see JT O'Sullivan comment on my Keenan Allen post?
What did he say?
So I did the every other letter like Keenan Allen is washed, which made Allen look like alien. By the way,
Right?
someone commented on that. JT commented, and because he's the main culprit, but then everyone has gone with it, the internet. And he said, maybe he's just a mutter. I just laughed because I mean, I respect him, even if we disagree. I think he's
Well,
awesome. I laugh at the guy. He's so
JT's
much good content.
JT's great. And
Yeah.
one thing that I personally believe is that on one hand, JT is look, I'm not some content creator that's amazing. Dude's got 350,000 subscribers. We don't. So it's not like I've got anything to teach him, but it does seem like he's taking his relationship with Bears fans a little seriously and not looking his bias in the eye. And I mean that in the sense that JT wants fast receivers. He wants guys that are big and also fast.
Yeah.
Keenan Allen is not that. Keenan Allen was a third round pick for a reason. If he was Keenan Allen's size and also fast, he would have not been a third round pick ever, ever. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
you're taking this is like looking at Tyler Linderbaum and I go, he's small. Yeah, he's Tyler Linderbaum. Like that's what he is. He's never not going to be like Keenan Allen's not going to just turn it on and be fast. That's not
Mhm.
his game. And I just believe that if the Bears really brought Keenan Allen in for a fourth round pick, paying him $23 million a season so that he can run over routes, that yeah, you should go ahead and have a chat with Shane Waldron about
Right.
how we're spending our money. I
Right.
just don't buy that, right? Doesn't
No.
mean that Keenan's suddenly going to be, I really don't know if he's going to be a 1,000-yard guy. I have no idea. I don't know what Caleb's going to finish the season at. But to your point about like the Keenan Allen's washed, Keenan Allen's fat, Keenan Allen's this, that, or the other, we're all kind of just wringing our hands. And it is one thing that I'm very thankful that we're out of preseason because
Yeah.
now we can stop acting like the stuff that we're seeing is law. Because
Did
one thing that I'll say, Nick, this is going to be very short. When you and I dissect film, the reason we're able to make assumptions is because the games count. Every single game matters for your next arbitration if you're a player, for
Yeah.
your coaching resume if you're a coach. And because every single game matters, we can assume that both teams are trying to win. Trying to win means you think these are your best players. Trying to win means you think on defense, this is going to get you a stop. On offense, you think this is going to score something or it's going to lead to scoring. In the preseason, you can't actually make those assumptions all the time,
No.
right? And it breaks it breaks what you and I do in terms of being able to look at the film, say exactly what's going on, say exactly why the Bears are probably doing it. Because the moment you get into that world of, well, I'm not totally sure why they're doing it, then we may not know what they're doing at all. They may
Mhm.
be calling these plays around Gerald Everett because they want to test Everett. They may think Everett's a dude, and we're not going to know the difference,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
See,
they could be setting up their week 1 opponent for all we know. The one thing that gave me the most ease with Keenan Allen, besides, me watching his entire career, and he had his one of his best years last year, was, Tyreek Stevenson had, a press conference, and, they asked him, like, "Hey, what's it like going against DJ and Keenan?" And Tyreek's confident dude, right?
mhm.
He's like, "Oh, man, DJ's good, whatever." He was like, "Keenan." He was like, "Ugh." And he's just like, he's different. He's like, because they're just different route runners. Like DJ's not going to deviate much from what the route concept is.
Nope.
But he's like, you have to be ready for everything because he's got counters off his count. Like, he's got so many different ways he releases and runs routes and hesitates. And like, he's like, I've learned a lot from him. And they said it. I mean, even in Hard Knocks, they're like, "Oh, that guy's unguardable." I have a problem that now the switch from practice, what the players are saying, and I get their problem. I can be like, he's washed. I understand that. People that are pessimistic from last year and stuff to a couple preseason games, and now all of a sudden he's just bad.
And that's the thing, right? At the end of the day, just like we've talked about for weeks, I'm not going to believe Keenan Allen's washed until I see him catch 22 yards or less for 5 weeks in a row. This is
Right.
Keenan Allen we're talking about. He's productive as all hell. He's being paid a lot of money. I have no reason to believe in the monster under our bed until it comes out and growls at me, right? Especially because preseason is the season of Jamar Chase can't catch. He's going to be a bust. Preseason is the season of Kenny Pickett has figured it out in year 2. Watch
Oh
out,
man.
NFL. Like, we come up with weird, kooky takes when at the end of the day, I'm almost shocked Keenan played in the preseason at all. And
Yes.
so there's There's a balance to all of it. That I'm glad Caleb Williams. This is an underdiscussed thing, I think, Nick. I'm glad Caleb Williams didn't run the high school Harry offense that all these other rookies are running. All of them are running exclusively like an out route. It's like a sprint out, a flare out, and then a screen, and then you run mesh one time. That's your big boy rep from the pocket. You run a
Yep.
couple posts down the field. And that's not me hating on Bo Nix or Jaden Daniels. Oh, and a bunch of RPOs. Don't forget the RPOs.
Oh yeah.
Caleb looks like he's running more of a drop back prep game with
Mhm.
a ton of rollouts. And the rollouts are kind of cheating. And I get that. But this preseason felt to me like the Bears were intentionally trying to get some of the week one jitters out of the way early. Like
Yes.
instead of taking a halfway step towards getting ready, they went, this is what it looks like to run an NFL play. Where'd you screw up? Where'd you
Mhm.
win? And that feels like it could help the Bears be that much readier for week one, where, at least in my opinion, Nick, taking it from last year and 2019 and a couple of the other seasons we've seen, when you've got this much emotion behind you and when the press is behind you, players can say that they don't read the press. They do. We all
They
know
do.
they do.
They do.
Falling on your face in week one hurts. That's hard to recover
Don't
from.
bring it up, Robert. Don't come on.
I'm not. I'm actually trying to say I think the way the Bears are going about this gives them their best chances possible to be not only competitive but victorious against a week one team in Tennessee that is not world beaters. They're not awful either, but they aren't the Packers, right? They're not this demon that's haunted Chicago for a decade. I really love the schedule. I really do. Because you get to avoid a lot of the incredibly high emotion games that might make your season feel weird early. But anyways, there's a lot more to talk about
Right.
because
All right. I'm
yeah,
gonna jump us off here at this 53-man roster. And I gave this to Robert ahead of time. He didn't say anything. I think we agree on the top 41.
probably.
Okay. And actually, I see right now, I'll call it 42. Um, so Caleb and Tyson. So just stop me, Robert, if you disagree here.
Yep.
So quarterback Caleb and Tyson, they're locked in. Swift, Herbert, Roshan, locked in.
Mm-hmm.
Kari Game, locked in. Braxton Jones, Tevin Jenkins, Coleman Shelton, Nate Davis, Darnell Wright, Ryan Bates, Karan Amagaji, locked in.
Mm-hmm.
So 7-0 linemen. 3 tight ends, Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett, Mercedes Lewis. 4 receivers, DJ, Keenan, Rome, Tyler Scott. So that's your offense. That's 20 guys locked in. Defense, I already have to make a change here. I didn't see this one. So 4 DNs are locked in. Sweat, Walker, Booker, and now Taylor. Billings, Dexter, Pickens locked in. 4 linebackers, Edmonds, Edwards, Sanborn, and Angbang Biamia. Try it again. We'll see if I was good, right or wrong there. No one said anything. 5 corners, Johnson, Stevenson, Gordon, Smith, Blackwell. And then 3 safeties, Brisker, Byard, and Owens. And then your 3 specialists, Santos, Taylor, and Scales. Any disagreements with those? That'd be 42.
I agree with you on all of them. The only
Okay.
one I don't know about is Kari Blasingame. I just don't know.
Okay.
We're changing offenses, so I don't know.
Sure.
Is all I'm saying there. But I actually think we could add a couple. Do you want to add a couple?
Well, so I mean, so now we can go through our 53. So if you want to go position by position, I think that's probably easiest.
I don't know. Like it's funny because there's some of these, like for instance, if I'm his coach, Elijah Hicks has done nothing to make me cut him. Like I need
Yeah.
4 safeties regardless. So whether we're keeping a 5th safety can be a discussion for later, but I'm adding Elijah Hicks to this list if it's me because he has been nothing but exactly what you want your 4th safety to be.
Yep. He's earned it. I agree with you. So yeah, if you want to add him on, good. Then that's 43.
Him,
I prefer to go top down though. I think it'd be easier.
let's do that. For you, let's do that.
Okay. So 2 quarterbacks. Okay. Are you keeping Brett Rippon?
No. I'm going to try to get him on my practice squad because I want a veteran in the quarterback room, but I don't need him on the roster.
Nope. Yep. I'm with you too. Yeah. I got Brett Rippon. I would put Rippon and Austin Reed on the practice squad. And if I only get one, I'm okay with it.
Mm-hmm. I would be really surprised if somebody picks up Rippon. That's just my opinion. But I guess you never know the Chiefs scout team quarterback looked awful last night. And if I
Yeah.
was the Chiefs, a guy like Rippon makes more sense than whoever that was. But
Yeah.
that's not me trying to be a hater. It's more
Yeah.
like every team's looking for Rippon is exactly the kind of guy that could legitimately be claimed by somebody else because it's kind of like him just becoming a free agent again, as opposed to a waiver claim.
Right.
There's a
And
difference, Bears fan. Just in
yeah.
case this sounds pedantic, if the Bears waive, oh my gosh, remind me his name. If the Bears waive Baskerville, Micah Baskerville, then every other team has to work off of their draft profile of Micah Baskerville, plus what they've heard from the Bears about Micah Baskerville. All the information is very centralized around the Bears system. With Rippon, you have NFL game tape from years of him starting. So you're not as worried if you add him, even though you know it'll take him a minute to spin up on the offense.
Yeah. Um, that's valid. The other part too is just like I know there's a part with quarterbacks where it's tough to learn a system. Like that's probably the hardest one to switch teams. And if you're an opponent, you want to claim their quarterback and whatnot, which I get. But with that too, and he's not a young guy, Robert, I don't want to guarantee Brett Rippon's salary. And
No.
even if he's on the if even if he's on the practice squad, y'all, he still can be active on game days as that third emergency quarterback. So again, it doesn't even make sense, I don't think, to have 3 on the 53.
No. But speaking of three so far, we have three running backs in Swift, Herbert, and Roshan. Who else is making your team?
uh my second to last guy on my guys I'm keeping. I did add Valus on there. And it's not because of how he played at running back against Kansas City, which I'm going to use a Robert here. It's kind of like Alex Barr's looking good against the force. Like he had these long runs against guys that aren't going to be on teams. But if we're looking at what's going to help the Bears on a game day, he's a gunner. He's returning kicks, and we're talking about yardage and everything, and he's pretty good at kick returning, y'all. And he can be good at this too. I don't know that he's going to get carries. If he's in the game and he gets carries, I think it's kind of obvious what the scheme is, which I don't like. He's not good as a receiver. He's barely, you know, catches anything. I I could be talked out of Vegas, but I did put him on my 53.
Valus is on my 53 too. The complicated part is that I put him on there as a receiver. I don't know what the Bears are going to do. Maybe you consider that you're keeping five running backs because of special teams, but I don't think he's ready enough for running back yet for me to roster him as a running back. And so I tried to flip a coin and then I caught the coin in the air and put Ian Wheeler on my roster. Mostly because
Oh,
Mostly because I'm frustrated. I'm that frustrated with Herbert. Or not Herbert, Homer is the best way I could put it. Where yet I know I'm letting two plays dictate too much. Homer has been utterly unspectacular as a runner, and when he got his opportunities to catch a pass, it didn't matter. Like
mm,
he blew them both in relatively spectacular fashion. I'm a guy on the internet. And worse, I don't know who's killing it on special teams.
yeah.
So take this one with a major grain of salt. But Wheeler, to me, is the kind of guy that if Herbert or Roshan go down, he's quick enough to be a substitute for what Herbert brings, and he's thick enough to bring the power that Roshan has. So Ian could be, I think, your reserve RB3 and do a better job at that than Homer would. And then Valus would be more of a scat back gadget, which I'm going to roster as my wide receiver 6, but
Yeah.
I don't expect him to play much wide receiver. Valus is very weird, and he makes putting him on the roster a mess.
Yeah,
But
he's a gadget guy. I got two things to support your claim. Okay, so first off, Travis Homer, y'all, if the Bears keep him, his salary of $2.1 million is guaranteed week one. He only has a quarter of a million, actually 225,000 is dead cap. So that's not bad. Save a lot of money there. And even if you're not, the other part too, y'all, if you're saving money, it doesn't mean you're going to sign someone this year. Cap space can be carried over. So every little bit can help. And then Valus, the other reason why Robert I put him on is his salary is 1.474 million and 555,000 is dead cap. And I'm like, that's quite a bit. So they're pretty invested. Kari Blasingame, you want to have that conversation? 1.5 million, zero dead cap if you cut him.
I do think you keep him. And this is frankly winning off incumbency. Can I be honest? If you're telling me, if you told me right now, I just spoke with Shane Waldron. He wants to use more tight ends. If they need a fullback, they're probably just going to run one of the tight ends as a fullback, and they're going to go from there. I'd go, okay, cool, and I would not fight for Kari Blasingame. But he's been on the roster for 2 years. He's a darn good blocker when he's in open space. And the Bears ran a couple really successful toss sweeps earlier in the preseason with Blasingame in there. So given the limited information we have, I'm keeping him. But
So
yeah,
so I'm with you. I'm going to keep him on the limited information. I do have a twist in here next, so we can go over that. But I got to go back to Wheeler. I don't have Wheeler on my 53. I have him on as a practice squad guy.
I mean, I
'Cause
think he's going to be a classic practice squad guy.
yeah. So to me, if you need him to, and the good part, y'all, is things have changed because used to be whenever you activated a guy, you have to, kick a guy off at 53. They changed that where you can do that on Saturday and not have to do that until the next week. So that could happen. Hey, there's an injury, a guy is going to be inactive, Herbert, Johnson, Swift, and then you can bring him up. So I'm okay there. So let me throw the wrench in here. I want to go to tight ends
Okay.
because we have our three locked in, and I'm keeping a fourth, which is probably surprising. And I'm going to tell you why I'm keeping a fourth. Couple reasons. One is Shane Waldron likes multiple tight end sets.
Yep.
He just does. Mercedes Lewis is 114 years old.
Yep.
Okay. Love him. But I don't know how many snaps he's going to go this year, even though he's good. Now, Everett is more of a receiving tight end, and you got Komet. So I'm keeping another tight end, one, because I think it would be good. That's the same body type. I think that would be good with the kickoff rules too. And I want one that can be help with a blocker too, which to me, if you want to argue keeping a fourth tight end and getting rid of Blasingame, I could see it, but also I'm keeping both. I'm keeping Brendan Bates. Brendan Bates is 24 years old.
Which number is he?
So 87.
Yes. I was like, he's going to keep 47 or 87. It's one of them.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I don't mind Sweeney, but Sweeney's 29. What upside is there? Carlson is older too. So again, talking about this week one, this really cheap guy, right? Who has some upside. I mean, he's really, really cheap guy out of Kentucky, but I think he's shown some athleticism. I think he's kind of shown some there. And I looked at the PFF grades, Robert, for our offense and defense and special teams. Now, again, I know small sample size against, the fours, whatever. He was our fourth best offensive player with blocking, run and pass, and receiving. He had an 85.8 overall. And so to me, I'm like, okay, young kid, flashing a little bit. I think it's valid to have a fourth tight end in this offense. I got him on the roster.
I also think that people keep talking, I've heard it a lot, that running backs and linebacker types are going to be your key special teamers. I think the same applies for tight ends. I mean,
Yep.
I've seen Dom Rob chucking blocks on the punt and kickoff coverage. So I think a fourth tight end makes all the sense of the world. You said it was Bates, right?
Yep. Base. Yep. That's what I got.
So that brings us up to 46 right now. For all I know, Wheeler could get cut. As we talk through this, we should talk offensive line. Who's your eighth offensive lineman? Obviously, a lot of this depends on how they visualize where Karan's going to go. I don't think Matt Pryor has made the team unless you think he's going to be your inside-outside guy. I would tend to think that they're going to rock an interior lineman. But what do you think?
I have them keeping 9. So I think, I mean, just our 53 is going to be different. You got Wheeler. I got Bates.
Well, I may cut one. I'm just
I got
scared.
you.
I'm scared of the running back room, as stated, being Swift, Herbert, Roshan, Wheeler, Valus, and me as a fan on the internet. I haven't
Mhm.
seen anything from DeAndre Carter that makes him worth keeping. I mean,
Yeah. So that's a good conversation. So let's do O-line. I'm keeping Matt Pryor for a couple reasons. One, Matt Pryor, I think, has dominated preseason. mean, he's a big boy. He is moving people. He's got experience at tackle and at guard, as you had said. I mean, I think I'd have to look it up. I think he's had over 800 snaps at tackle as well. So while you're waiting for Karan to get ready for his body, I think Pryor's your backup. We don't even know what's going to happen with Bates, but if you have to lean into any backup, I think Matt Pryor's your first one at 4 spots. Um, and I have them keeping a ninth alignment, but I want to see if you have anybody else.
Well, I'm not going to argue with Pryor. I know I earlier said that I don't know if he's making the team, but to your point, Karan puts you in a very awkward place. You can't cut him, but you don't think he's going to be useful. So, for all intents and purposes, you need one guy that can get you the efficiency of 2 roster spots. And then it dawned on me as you were talking, oh yeah, this guy can play 4 of them. Like
Yes.
that's really important. They obviously, in my opinion, tried him at guard because they were like, we know you can play tackle. We're aware. Can you play
Mhm.
guard? Because if you can play guard, we've got a spot for you. So
Yep.
he's the 8th offensive lineman. And then having a ninth makes a lot of sense to me. I think you could go a lot of ways with this. You could go Jatiri Carter. You could go Colburn. You could go Bill Murray. Bill Murray's actually had quite a preseason and camp based on where they keep playing him. But what's on your mind?
You got it, man. I got Bill Murray on the team. I did not think I was going to get there, but when I was rounding out the team, I mean, he's played well in camp. He's played well in preseason. He's got versatility. Um, I thought he made the most sense because because I'm thinking of this part of it too, Robert. Is Bates going to be even active for week 1? I don't know where he's at with his injury. If he's not, then you got Pryor and Murray who can help out anywhere kind of inside. Um, and I don't know if Amagaji be there, but I mean, normally it's what 7 or you want to go 8 active on game day. So I think Murray's one of them, and then who knows how you're going to go from there if Bates and Amagaji can't go.
Truly. No idea. And I have no argument either. At the end of the day, I think Jatiri Carter is the type that I don't think he'll get claimed, and he should have practice squad eligibility. So
Yeah,
unless he gets mad and signs with another practice
right.
squad somewhere, which is always possible,
Yeah.
then you got to move on. You're in a new regime, working with a new offense. If an old lineman that was more of a project anyways falls off the wagon, then so be it. But I think the really interesting room to talk about here, especially if you,
Could do one more quick?
yeah,
The only other one you could debate is, let's say Amagaji's not going to be ready, and I don't know if you can pup him. I don't know,
ooh,
or Bates. Would be Jake Curran. Not going to be expensive. He's played tackle again. Experience with Waldron. Only $1 million to keep him, and he could be at tackle. So that'd be the only other one I would consider.
pretty funny how viciously we're cutting Larry Borum if you think about it. Like that name just didn't even come up, and he's
I
hurt.
know.
So
I feel bad he got hurt, but he's almost $3.2 million. He's not worth that.
it's tough. I've heard somebody talk about this in the past where they mentioned that there are some players that can actually play their way off the roster because for those who don't know, there are performance incentives for how many snaps you play. And Larry Borum hit enough performance incentives that here in his third, fourth year, I think it's his fourth, he is too expensive.
Yep.
He's more expensive than the veteran minimum player. And so for rosters that are basically pinching every penny possible, yeah, you got to move in a different direction. I think
Yep.
the weirdest room right now, and I say weirdest because I thought it looked easy until Brad Biggs and Courtney Cronin seemed to suggest that Dante Pettis may not make this team, is wide receiver. The
Yep.
first 4 are really easy,
Yep.
but where do you put who? I have Valus in the wide receiver room purely so I can add 6 wide receivers. Like
Yep.
I did. I am so unenthusiastic. Sorry to you, Colin. Colin Johnson got hurt at the wrong time because, at least for me, his injury made it to where I couldn't see him outside of just the Hall of Fame game. And outside of the Hall of Fame game, they have only thrown to tight ends.
Yep.
Like the wide receivers have apparently been so unspectacular that they're going to play Tyler Scott darn near the entire third preseason game or week 3 preseason game, not the third one, whatever, because they just don't have anybody else that can catch a football. So
Mhm.
the only other person that can catch a football is Dante Pettis. which is why I have him on my roster, but it's almost out of like exasperation. You know what I mean?
Mhm. The thing with Pettis right now, besides any of that, is he's hurt.
Yes.
And in practice, he's on a bike. So I think and he's 29, so you think about his number, like, he might be one of those guys, Robert, where he's cut, and then you could bring him back after week 1, and it might be cheaper. That might be one of the moves, especially if he's not even healthy right now. Um, yeah, I mean, you can make I think Colin Johnson's a practice squad guy for sure. I doubt someone would claim him, if I'm being honest, and he knows the system, which helps. Which brings me back to and DeAndre Carter's an interesting one too. Um, so I know he had the one bad punt return, y'all. I know that's what you're thinking of, and he's been dinged up a little bit. He's got NFL experience as a returner in general. He had a 16, 19-yard return as a punt return already in that game, but his salary is 1.06 million, Robert. 450K dead cap if you cut him. That almost sounds like he's guaranteed a spot.
That's a
But
good point.
I don't have him on my 53. But like if it happens, y'all, that might be why. Because half of it's already guaranteed. What's the other, 600 K? I have Webster on there. Webster's a returner. Webster's on special teams units. Webster looked solid as a receiver. Like he's the one I think he might be like the last one standing.
Webster would be a total dream come true guy. Like he's been working his butt off to make a
Mhm.
roster, and if he makes it, that would be awesome for him from a story perspective. If it's me, my wide receiver room is DJ Keenan, Rome Scott, Bayless, Blah, and Pettis. But like you're saying, I don't know Pettis' injury. I'm
Yeah,
assuming it's minor, but because it doesn't help anything that they're playing off of they're playing they played a Thursday game, so anybody who was even nicked a little isn't gonna go.
right.
But let's get to the defense because at the
Sure.
end of the day, you and I are talking about names that might be on the roster rather than submitting, let's call it final 53-man roster predictions because those will come out on Monday. But let's go defensive end. We've got four that are virtual locks, adding Taylor. Who's the fifth?
Yeah. So overall, I've got 25 on my offense. Okay, just for y'all keeping count at home. The four DNs, and I put this on Twitter. People got mad at me because people are very, very have this love with Daniel Hardy. I have him on my practice squad. I've got them keeping Dom Rob as my 5. Now you could talk me into a 6 because I'll tell you who the last guy is I had on. And if you want to add in a 5th safety, you want to add in a 6 or a 7th receiver for Robert, 6th for me. I mean, however you could and add Hardy as the 6th edge, but I have him keeping Dominic Robinson for the simple fact of he's big. If you move Walker inside to rotate at D tackle, which you're going to have because Billings and Dexter aren't going to take 100% of the snaps. That's not how defensive line works. And depending on who you pick up and Pickens's status, he's got to get snaps inside. So that leaves you Sweat. And you're saying Taylor's 250 pounds. We know Booker's thin. We know Hardy's thin. I'm going to keep the 273-pound guy that knows the system. He can help on special teams. They asked him to change his body, Robert, and he did. It'd be tough for me to cut him because of that. Also, Dominic Robinson has 136K in dead cap, which doesn't sound like a lot, but these other guys have like virtually none.
Dominic Robinson was one of the worst defensive ends in football. And I don't mean that lightly last year.
Mhm.
According to PFF, I think he was bottom 5 out of 120. So we are not talking about a player that historically we like. But both of us have him on the roster because nobody else can anchor the end. I mean, you have to have this team ready for for Armageddon, for lack of a better word, dude. Like, why is Pettis on my roster? To use an example, because in a pinch, Pettis will be able to play the number 2 wide receiver role
Yep.
in a real pinch, and you
Mhm.
can get away with it, right? Why is Wheeler on my team? Because again, first of all, it's also partially because I have I'm largely unfocused on special teams. If I can be honest, I don't see it, I don't coach it, I don't try to. Wheeler is the most versatile running back that I have but you could probably put him on the practice squad, and I'm not going to shed a tear because I don't think anybody's going to pick him up after some late season run. If Sweat goes down right now, your entire defensive line rests on DeMarcus Walker, and he cannot play every snap. You
Nope.
have to have somebody that can rotate for him in that setting. It's Dom Rob. And if it's not Dom Rob, it'll be somebody that they pick up off the cut wire.
Yep. Yep. And the other guy to talk about here is Jacob Martin, who I don't know what he injured, when he'll be back. 1.152 million, 667K in dead cap, Robert. There's a chance he makes the roster because they already anticipated that. Now, the other debate would be you trade for Taylor, who's basically Jacob Martin, who the poor version of that is basically Daniel Hardy. It's how much of a repeat do you want of the same type of guy,
Right.
But I could see a world where Jacob Martin's there because they already almost guaranteed it in salary.
I don't have any idea what's going on there, truly, because like you're saying, you're playing follow the money. I think that's smart. I'm playing the more common sense, I guess, of I haven't seen him at all. He's not been
Yep.
there at camp. At this point, I would imagine that they can't trust him. They didn't make this trade so that they could play Jacob Martin, right? At
Right.
least that's what's going on in my mind.
Mhm.
So I'm not envisioning that Jacob Martin's there, but I think a lot of questions need to be asked about what's going on in their DT room. I would
Yes.
even tell you that I think that there's an ad coming because I don't think any of the defensive tackles that we've seen have sparkled in some way that I think was super important to keep. But do you disagree?
No, no, I had 3 kept. Um and I only have 52 on my 53 because I have +1 for a DT claim because it is 100% going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Or a trade. They're bringing another defensive tackle in. I thought that before I got wind of the Pickens injury. Now it's even more desperate.
Man, we are getting down to the wire. Like, at least based on tracking the player count, we are 2 players away from finishing up 53. And then we might have to go through and comb it a little bit. But we've got 2 rooms left to do in linebacker and corner. And ironically, I only have one guy to add in each. So that may fit. I think I have too many on offense, to be honest. Like, just because right now I think I'm gonna end up skewed to where I have like 23 on defense and 26 on offense or something like
Mm,
that. But who knows? Maybe that's how it sticks. Linebacker, do you have more than 4?
I do have more than 4.
Do you have 6?
I have 6.
Who's the 6th?
Okay, so I have Sewell just because of the investment.
Yeah, he's gotta be
I
right.
think he got to. He's got more potential. Um, the last guy I have. So the second to last guy I put on the roster was Valus. The last guy, and again, this is a 52 because 53 is this claim. Is Micah Baskerville.
I
Young kid. He's flashed. He's going to play some special teams units. It feels like he's earned it. And if you look of special teams, these are the type of guys that you want.
I love Baskerville. I read somewhere he is apparently really poor at special teams. And I don't know if that's driving my thought, but I know they got him to the practice squad last year. And given the position they're in, he's the guy. I guess my question is this, Nick. I'll give you a choice. Make a choice for me, okay? Would you rather me send Wheeler to the practice squad or Baskerville to the practice squad?
Wheeler.
Wheeler.
Yeah.
So in that case, if Coach Whalen had given me that advice, then I could put Baskey on the team over Wheeler because I got too many on offense anyways, right?
Now, if I don't keep Valus Jones on the roster, that changes my opinion.
I think you have to. I mean,
I know. I'm just saying, but in terms of that, because that's a possibility, y'all. I think.
it's a possibility, but you avoided my epic Valus rant because at least where I'm coming at this, Nick, is there's too much NFL. Like, turn on the film and point and watch Valus run around everybody in New York, right? Like, too many games where Valus Jones on an NFL field against starters look just as fast as he does against those fours. And the part that I like about watching Velus run, I don't know how you feel about it, is when he does get a seam on those tosses, especially if he hits the third level, he actually makes the cuts that most running backs don't think to make. Him cutting across the field and having the speed to dust everybody to turn what coulda, shoulda, woulda been a 17-yard gain into a 35-yard touchdown is what keeps me coming back. And
Robert,
I'm
Robert, Robert,
sick. I'm
you're
sick and I need help.
Robert, you're on this rant, and I got to pull you in. This is against the fourth or fifth string Chiefs in the last preseason game for us
I know.
on a huge lane. That was
I
a
know.
huge lane.
I know. But at least what I'm seeing from Velus is that he can move his feet like a running back in the middle. Like they gave him a couple of against the threes power downs, like 3rd and 1. Go hit the A gap. Get us the first. And he did. And so I'm not trying to tell you that I think that he's a superstar born again or superstar runner that's like right about to pop, Nick. I'm saying that I think he's an intriguing scat back that knows the system enough to play wide receiver, and his contract doesn't really make him cuttable anyways. So unless he's just a total waste in the Bears' eyes, I would get why they keep him. And I'm going to just continue to think that they're going to keep him until I read the Schefter text that he's been cut. You know what I mean?
How many? Well, let's just put this out there, okay? Y'all can write this down, okay? How many NFL carries as a running back will Velus Jones have?
He's already had about 15 to 20.
As a
So,
running back?
yes. Like out of the backfield, if you go back and think about it, there was a game last year in particular where they gave him like 3 or 4 carries. And then I'm counting jet passes, which is probably not fair,
Oh, I'm
but
not
those are
counting that.
basic.
I'm counting you're the running back.
The jet pass is such a handoff. Like, but I get you. I get you. I think that he ends up with I think he ends up with 35 carries this season. If he's on the roster, I think he gets carries.
Okay. I'll take the under.
I think you're smart to take the under. But I think
I
that there's
mean,
no let me put it this way, Nick. I think keeping Velus Jones and not giving him 35 carries is wasting the roster spot. So if you're not going to give him 35 carries, just cut him. Because
but what and this is where I get to. That's why he's one of the last two. I can claim another guy instead of Baskerville, and I'm perfectly fine with it. I could claim another guy instead of Velus and have Webster or Scott or
Mhm.
Herbert or heck, even Roshan return kicks.
For me, if I can get Velus Jones, who I've heard, like I'm sure you've seen the same thing I have, players all make jokes about how hard it is for Velus to get lined up. If I can get Velus to be okay as a wide receiver, no, I'm overstating this, Nick. If I can get Velus to be like NFL bad as a wide receiver, run me a smoke route, run a drag across the middle,
This is the
like
conversation every team has had about Cordell
I
Patterson for
know,
years.
I know it is,
Robert,
but we
I
didn't
have
spend a first, we spent a third.
so cut him then.
What
If you I mean, I just you can't trust this guy to
what
have a
I
big role
want
on your team.
What I want is the flexibility to break the huddle, go to empty, pull Velus Jones into the backfield, and run up the gut on 3rd and 1. Like,
If okay, Deontay Foreman, Khalil Herbert, right? When they were at running back last year,
mm-hmm.
you knew it was a run.
Yes.
Bayless Jones comes on this field. Alert, 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 alert. He's either going to run a bubble or he's going to get a handoff and it's going to tip off your play calling.
Or he probably isn't going to block, but he'll do that thing that Foreman did because Foreman didn't block either. Like with Foreman, they just run a bunch of play action and have him just sniff off sniff right on out of the formation and run the action or whatever. I hear you. For me, there's some formation fun that comes from a guy like Velus Jones because when Herbert flexes out from the backfield and into empty, I'm shocked the defense honors it at all. You know what I mean? Herbert's
Well,
not doing anything out there. Like, have
no.
fun, 24. You're never getting the ball.
No, but Herbert's not gonna trip over his own feet in a preseason game and fall over. I did the more players, Robert, that aren't gonna mess up or ask the ref if I have to kneel it if it goes into the end zone, I can get off of the field. I'm gonna do it. But anyways, let's move on to corner, okay? Because we
Mhm.
still have some positions to go here.
It's just this one, though.
Unless you keep it fifth safety. But yeah. Um, so we're
Are you
5 deep
keeping a
with
fifth safety?
Blackwell.
Are you keeping
What?
fifth safety?
I debated it.
Did you do it?
I did not do it. I
There you
debated
go. We're done.
it.
Four safeties.
Okay. Do you have 5 or 6 corners?
6. I'm
Okay. Who's
keeping
your
Jalen
6th?
Jones.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I think he's the right guy to keep on one hand, and on another hand, oh wait a minute. Yeah, okay. So we've got Jalen Johnson, Tyreek Stevenson, Kyler Gordon, Terrell Smith, and Noah Blackwell, and especially with
Josh
Stevenson,
Blackwell.
Josh Blackwell. Sorry, Stevenson has some shoulder issues. Jalen Johnson has some shoulder issues.
Mhm.
Kyler Gordon can't stay healthy. Jalen Jones has played nickel and outside corner. Josh Blackwell is an inside corner. So to me, Jones is that guy. I don't know if he's a teamer, but I'd be shocked if he's not, given that he's stuck on the roster for as long as he is.
Yep.
He's the kind of guy that I think starts to slowly become your Sherrick McManus type, right? Where it's like he's been on the roster forever.
Right. Longest tenured Bear, yeah. Uh,
Right?
there's yeah, and that was my extra corner too. I I did debate a little bit, and not because of the pick six, y'all, which the pick six was not even the most impressive play that Ray Stewart had. It was him reading the eyes and shuffling in front of that hitch near the goal line and picking it. That was his best play.
That was sweet.
He's had a decent camp, Robert. He's
Oh
and
yeah.
he's an I know Blackwell's your backup nickel. He can do that. He can cover. He makes plays. I couldn't get a spot on there because I was like, oh, do I keep 3 safeties and then do I keep another corner? But I can't. Hicks has done enough. He's a good tackler. So like this is where you get into that. How do you keep those last few guys on the team that you want? There's not enough spots. And like, how can they get on the field? Special teams is part of it. The other part is half of me, Robert, thinks, I mean, do we need to get 2 defensive tackles? Do we
I don't
need
know.
do we need
That's a good question.
2 more? Yeah, I mean, depends on if Pickens has to go on. I mean, how
Right. It depends on
bad
how
an injury
bad
is.
Pickens'
Like,
injury is.
though, that's where it's going to be pretty rough here, I think.
And that'll be decisions that they got to make. Not to hang you in silence for a hot minute. I
No, I
think
just because it's just I mean, literally, I wrote out my 53, and I spent way more time than people want to know of like, no, not this guy, then this guy. Then I'm like, I probably honestly, I probably spent 4 hours on this. Okay, this guy, you know, how often is this person going to be used? Like you just go through all that. Then I go through the
right.
money part of it and then practice squad and stuff. Like it's tough. To me, I think that part of it is who's going to help you this year, who's going to help you in the future as well. Like there's a lot to it, really.
There is. And I mean, it's funny, right? Because then I think you start to go through this thing where it's like, well, who can I put on the practice squad? Right. And I don't really want to put together a full 12-man practice squad, to be honest with you. I just think that's going to take too long. And we're already an hour and 20 into the show. But it, I think, Nick, the funniest part about this time of season is that we've just watched a bunch of practice, or we've just watched a bunch of preseason film. We're hopped up on football, and you go, how are we going to keep Rodney Anderson? How are we going to keep
Yep.
Tanner Gentry?
Yep.
What do you mean they cut Tanner Gentry? Right? Like that kind of thing.
Yep.
And then you got to remember that all 31 teams, 32 teams are squeezing that last guy onto the roster with 3 other guys that didn't fit. And
Mhm.
so with it, when it comes to a guy like Reddy Stewart, I would be stunned if there's a team so in desperate need of corner that they look at all of the opportunity cost of teaching a rookie to play and specifically picked a guy like Reddy
Right.
off of the full waiver transfer list. Like, you got to remember, everybody, as much as I know that there are plenty of people that are paid a lot of money to go through all this stuff really fast, on another time, or at the same time, there's like 500 names that are going to be open and available
Mhm.
during 24-hour periods over the next 3 to 5 days. It's a lot. And Nick, I would be blown away if Reddy, you've got me convinced, if Reddy and Wheeler and a lot of the other younger dudes,
Bates.
Bates, couldn't just couldn't get to the practice squad if you needed them to be there.
Yep.
There are some of them you want on the roster because you just need them on the roster badly enough. But
Mhm.
Dom Rob has a better chance of getting claimed because he's a fifth round pick than Reddy Stewart, UDFA, or a lot of these other guys, right? It's brutal. It's not always the most rewarding topic to talk about because I would love to see Ian Wheeler make this team. But the more you've got me stewing on it, the more I'm like, it's a fun story and he is a useful player. But guys that pop in the preseason look like the Chiefs fullback from last night, where you gave him 7 carries and he devastated the Bears defensive line. That's just not been Wheeler's story. And if it was going to be, they would have given him more carries last night.
Yeah.
If anything, Nick, tinfoil time. Haven't brought the tinfoil hat out in a little while.
You haven't, man. I was wondering if you retired it.
Wheeler looked last night like the Bears are limiting his snaps to get him to the practice squad.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
that they're trying to give nothing away for free.
So, okay, so let's put your hat back on here, okay? Going to crazy theories here.
Okay.
Do you keep 6 DNs, Hardy being one of them, and not keep Micah Baskerville?
Remind me, what draft pick was Daniel Hardy originally for the Rams?
Oh, I think he was a 7th. I can look it up. But I did look up and I was shocked by this because in my mind, I'm like, okay, you know, because I was between Dom Rob, the whole group, and I was like, well, Dom Rob is super athletic. I looked up Hardy. Hardy's super athletic. He was a 7th round pick for the Rams. He ran a
Okay.
4.69, 40-inch vert, 6.71 3-cone, Robert, 10.7 broad jump. Like this dude's an athlete.
Oh yeah, dude. These DNs will jump out of the gym. Like
Yeah.
these DNs are the guys that could have potentially played NBA basketball if they were 5 inches taller,
His
which I get is a lot.
so I know he's 6'2 and an eighth, 239, but he's got 33.5-inch arms too. So he's got the arms. So like and it's almost as long as Dom Rob. So I you could twist my arm and go either way of whatever. But in my mind, I'm like, well, I don't know if he's good on special teams because we don't know.
Because we don't know.
Maybe you keep him over Baskerville and then
There
maybe
are
that's what you do.
linebackers that are heavier than Daniel Hardy. Like
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
are. And so you could argue that you could keep Hardy as a sixth DE because he's a linebacker.
Right.
Like in so far as special teams are concerned. But I
Right.
don't know. You and I would have to.
Like could you live in this world, Robert, where let's say you don't get or you claim one D end or D tackle, but they're not great, whatever. But your 3D tackle rotation is going to be Billings, Dexter, Walker most of the season. Okay. Because that's kind of what it was last year. Because then our fourth was what? Pickens, who didn't get a ton of snaps. But then it was Sweat, Booker, Dom Rob, Taylor, Hardy. And they just rotated the crap out of them to keep the energy level up. So then Booker can be just, I want to call him Spider-Man, but we got Spider-Man already on the team. But he's, just long limbs everywhere and just doing stuff. And
Right.
Hardy's just high energy and like, Taylor's a rusher. Like, I don't hate that idea because it's not like one guy just continually getting pounded and, just, okay, cool. We don't have the answer. We're going to put a bunch of guys at it. And when you're in there for your 5 snaps, you give 100%.
I think where things are tougher for me thinking it out is in principle, I think Hardy has earned it. This is that problem with the preseason, right? I've been trying to remember all day the CFL defensive end that was playing for the Bears not that long ago. Last name started with a V. If you remember it, and if anybody remembers it in the comments, you could say it now. And he got like 3 or 4 unblocked sacks and everybody wanted him on the team because they were like, he's productive. Even generated a forced fumble. And I cannot remember what happened to him. But the main thing is, Nick, I'm struggling because I look and I see Sweat, Walker, Booker, Taylor, Dom Rob. And I'm like, That is a full room. If the Bears added Hardy, they are adding it because we like him and we think he earned it, not because they need him there, if that makes sense. So I see it as a pure special teams decision. If my special teams coordinator said, I want him over him, then good. Whoever they wanted is is like making the team.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's tough because Hardy has earned it. He's done nothing wrong. The Bears just traded for a guy that's in his archetype. And
Right.
so
That's the
they're
thing.
good on his
Yep.
archetype.
Um, the other thing too, y'all, is the thing that I like, because it's like Hardy, like you want to root for him. Same thing with Webster, same thing with, Wheeler. Like you go through the list, like these guys, like Reddy, right? Stewart, like you want them to make it seem like they're feel good Bates. They're gonna get paid. They're gonna get a practice, because the practice squad used to be 5, then it was 8, then it was 9, I think. Now it's 16. Like there's a ton of guys that are gonna be on this practice squad. It's gonna rotate a bunch, but they're at least gonna get paid, which makes me feel good, Robert, that more people and the more people are gonna get paid to, play football. The other thing too to think about, y'all, is the practice squad, injured reserve, and your 53 all count against your salary cap. So when you think about like cap room and like why do they need so much room, these 16 practice squad guys count.
Whoa, I didn't realize the practice squad made so much money. I clearly got this conflated with MLB, like AAA, where
Mm.
AAA baseball players, to my understanding, get somewhere between like 80 and 110, maybe $125,000, whereas these guys get 1250 per week. That's 150K uh, over the course of a year, which it isn't, but 17 games. No, wait, 150K or 1250 a week is a lot. Never mind. I've been thinking in terms of 1250 a month.
Hold on. Aren't you a numbers guy at your job, Robert?
Yes, but so let's see, 12, 5 times 18 weeks of a regular season. Yeah, they're doing okay. They're doing
Yeah.
okay. That's $225,000. So Nisibba Webster is rocking it, playing professional football. I
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a lot of guys that the Bears have a real chance at keeping on their practice squad, especially with how big practice squads are at this point. It wouldn't surprise me if a lot of these guys are on the practice squad. I hope Austin Reed makes the practice squad, if for no other reason than having a Western Kentucky grad that's on the practice squad for my guy Nick Whalen.
Yeah,
But
man. Go
it's
Hilltoppers.
it's a funny conversation looking at the 53 because I do think you and I could sit here and we could sweat about it for the next bunch of days.
Yep.
And then we're going to get to week 1. And from week 1 until hopefully the playoff run that the Bears have, the bottom of the roster isn't going to matter. And if they're in the game, we're not going to be near as excited about them then as we are right
That's true.
now.
That's true. I will say this though. I mean, going through this exercise last year, and my whole life as a Bears fan, and looking at it now, dude, this team is so much better, man. I feel
Yes.
like look at the offensive line. I feel good about. I mean, Bates is injured. I feel good about Matt Pryor. I liked what I've seen from Amagaji in terms of college film. Bill Murray was solid, y'all. Like, when's the last time we felt good about reserves on the O line? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I mean, you can go through the list, like DB corner. I mean, Robert, we might have, if you go to the top, not just your starters, but you go back to Smith and Blackwell, we might have the deepest corner room in the league.
I hesitate to say that kind of thing because I feel like that's like saying the devil's name, right? But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I think Jalen Jones, I think Terrell Smith can both play. I think Josh Blackwell can play. I think the top 3 corners are legit. So I'm stoked about this team, man. I
Yeah.
hope Hicks doesn't get into the game because as much as we've seen him seem to take a step forward in the preseason, here's the problem, man. This is the biggest like the warning thing I could say about preseason, and I can't believe it took me until this long to remember. Deion Bush, every single preseason, looked like the man. You remember that? The
I remember.
man. The man would get to the season, looks like Deion Bush.
Yep.
And so there's a serious piece to all this where the almost practice tempo that a lot of this stuff gets played at can really trick the eye
Mhm.
and make us feel like some guys are better than others. And I don't want to dwell on it because I don't want to make anybody feel like we're being negative, certainly not overly negative on players that are working their hardest and they're trying to do something amazing. But Nick, the reality of it is, as far as talking about week 1 or the rest of the season, it'll hinge on the top 50, right? The next 3 will rotate. We saw Khalid Kareem get cut, get brought on, get cut, get brought
Yep.
on, and
Yep.
a couple other guys that are going to get cycled. So I feel like we've put together a really good 53 for now, or at
Mhm.
least a working 52. And then the rest will play out as it does because you and I are 2 men. We are not an entire like pro personnel department. We don't know who they
Right.
could cut and add
Yep.
just because the Eagles obviously saw an opportunity to add Josh Dotson, or Jahan Dotson. So if the Bears see some receiver that falls off another team's roster, do they move to go pick them up? I don't know.
Right.
Is Taj Washington gonna make Miami? I have no idea.
Right.
Would the Bears potentially roster Taj Washington if he doesn't make the Miami Dolphins?
Mhm.
I don't know. John Jackson is probably going to make the make the Bears practice squad because he's boys with Caleb. His name is John
After
Jackson.
that play, you think so?
I don't know, but
That was bad.
dude,
You
if
gotta tuck it. Get that tuck in there.
I agree, but if Ladarius Mack can spend as much time as he did in and around the Bears organization, star power from an important player goes a long
Oh, yeah.
way.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. So just in terms of Hard Knocks, y'all. So this week's episodes are going to be probably talking about this trade. They'll talk about the game. There'll be some more storylines. The last episode is going to be the tearjerker. That's when you're going to see the meetings with guys getting cut and stuff like that. You're like, oh man. But just to be prepared, because it's not going to be right away. Because the cuts are going to happen, I think, on Tuesday when it comes out.
I'm I didn't think about that, and that's going to be real tough.
I don't know.
But hey, at least it gives us some Bears content or over the next 17 days as we basically march through the proverbial desert.
So are we gonna have 2 episodes next week?
I don't know. Maybe we'll just do one. Kind of have a
So,
calm before the storm kind of thing.
yeah, a couple things we gotta talk about, though. One is, I mean, future episodes here would be, I think, revisit our season predictions, because now we're fresh, we're right up to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other one is people wanna hear my anti-Green Bay stuff, man. I know you're against it, but
I know people want to hear it. I know. This is like if you wanted to hear my impassioned stock tips, but newsflash, I am not good with stocks. And so, like, there's this part of it, Nick, where it's like, I agree with you. But at the same time, all of the data pointed to Green Bay being foul last year,
Mhm,
having as bad a Packers season as they could ever have. And for 8 weeks, reality held firm. And then for 8 more weeks, it broke and did whatever it normally does. So I,
mhm.
I actually agree with you. I think there's a place for the discussion that we have. I want you to know that I'm not picking the Packers being good because I like them. I'm picking them because I hate them and I refuse to let them keep embarrassing me. So, whether they're bad or good, when the Bears beat them, I'm going to act like they just felled a giant because,
Yeah,
data speaking, that's what they've been to us.
that's fair. It's fair, man. We don't have to get into it right now. The only other thing too would be, before the season, I could, tell anybody stuff about fantasy if they wanted to, but that's all. Just think of future episodes. If there any of that stuff is fascinating to y'all, we can cater
I love
to
it.
what
Let's
you
do it.
want. So just let me know. Put in the
Perfect.
comments. I enjoyed the comments so much on the last episode,
We
Robert.
need a good comment thing.
Yeah.
Um who is your last man on the roster and who's your last man off the roster? Does that work for you, Nick?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. I mean, you guys have to um go through your 53s. I think that would be a good one. Um and then in terms of the comments, so have your first one on, first one off. And then I think, just as a feel good, I want you to put in a random Chicago Bear that you remember. Like maybe from when you were a kid, but it can't be a star player. I want it to be like just a role player. And we're gonna go through because the guys sitting around and could just name off a bunch of bears. That's what I want to see. That'll be fun.
Man, what, like, sit back and go, Rasheed Davis, man.
Oh,
And then somebody
oh,
goes,
remember against the Vikings?
Rasheed
He had that seam.
Davis. Mm-hmm. I'll never
Yeah, I mean,
forget Kellen. No, it's
you going Kellen Davis?
no. I'm trying to remember the tight end I grew up with. He
See,
was
I go older than you. Like, so I'm 90s, so I can go like Keith Jennings, Ryan Wetnight, Chris Gedney. They had some old guys back there. And then you go like defensive end Alonzo Spellman was a big dude. There's
Rex
some guys that are
Grossman and
just
Jay threw to a specific tight end before Martellus Bennett for a while. Do you remember his name?
Jay.
Jay Cutler.
Oh, Jay Cutler's tight end.
Jay Cutler had a tight end before Martellus Bennett that had been there for quite a while. Like, he was there when I first started watching when
What
Muthi
number
was
is he?
Muhammad. He was an 80 something. Like, here, I'll look it up. You name more Bears.
Man, see, now you got me straining my mind. Musi Muhammad. Wow. Yeah, that was a squad. His son is in college ball right now, I think.
Isn't that crazy?
Which shows you how old we are. Yeah, man. There was some like you go back. I mean,
Des
like
Clark. Desmond Clark.
oh yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. Yeah. Um, him. Well, I remember Desmond Clark more with Rex Grossman than with Jay.
Most people are going to, but I don't remember the early days of Grossman. I remember jumping on the train and then it was over. And a young Robert didn't understand how a Super Bowl quarterback was benched, but he was.
Yeah, I remember. I remember scouting Rex Grossman out of Florida.
That's wild. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
and his bowl game and stuff. I mean, that would have been. I would have been either freshman in college or senior in high school.
Man,
Yeah.
Des bounced around a little bit. I didn't realize he had spent 4 seasons out of Chicago, like 3 in Denver, 1 in Miami, landed with Chicago, and then just stayed there until he retired. Good for him. That's a good career.
Here's one that everyone's gonna know. I mean, the young ones won't, but Curtis Enos, right? First round pick.
Hmm.
But here's what you don't know. I wanted the Bears to trade down with Jacksonville, who had 2 first round picks, because I wanted Fred Taylor. I swear this isn't like hindsight. I wanted Fred Taylor. They got Curtis Enos. I was like, "Ugh." And that's how it went. The big bruising running back that got a bad knee eventually didn't work out well. But yeah,
Shocker.
our Bears fandom here, y'all. So I want to see some of those names, bring back some of the memories. It'll be fun in the comment section. Or just tweet to me and Robert. Some people did that. I enjoyed that as well.
I love that too. Thank you guys so much for listening. Nick, you got anything else before we fully wrap up?
No, I mean, I think just this weekend and this next maybe week, 10 days, because I get big into the fantasy football and daily as well as the Bears and stuff. This is a good time to spend some quality time with the family, right? With the wife, your significant other, because when football season's here, maybe you don't spend as much time with them. So maybe take the vacation, take a day trip, do something nice, spend some good quality time. You want to get those I call it deposits into the bank, so when you have to
Right.
make some
The
withdrawals
goodwill.
later. So
You gotta pump that goodwill because soon it's gonna be. But hun, the New York Giants are playing the Denver Broncos. You expect me to miss this?
yeah.
Like, let alone anybody good. But
Yeah, I
so,
know. The sickness.
anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. I gotta run, but enjoy the show, or let us know that you enjoyed the show. Like it if you did. Rate us on any podcast platform that you have if you haven't already. We really do appreciate every single review. Right now we're sitting at like 4.9 stars. Let's get that thing up to 4.9 and a half. We love it. But have a great one. Enjoy the content. Enjoy the time. The Bears just went 4-0 in the postseason or preseason. Whoa. Would love for them to go 4-0 in the postseason, but we'll get there. For now, you could go back and you could look up highlights of the 2024 Bears in their little Bears uniform scoring touchdowns. And nobody can take that away from you until week 1 starts and none of it matters anymore. So enjoy it. Soak it in. The Bears right now are the preseason champs. And hey,
Can I give you one thing?
yeah.
Sorry, 'cause I'm on Twitter because you're closing out. People, this might get you pumped before the episode ends. If you're listening, this part of it, you're in for a treat. So someone tweeted this to me, whether this is true or not.
Okay.
They heard on ESPN Radio 1000 today. Since 2009, there have only been 6 teams, now 7 with Chicago, that have had a plus 60 point differential in the preseason. All 6 of them made the playoffs, and 2 of them made the Super Bowl. Bear down, baby. Let's go.
Bear down, baby. Perfect. Enjoy it. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much. Bear down. And thanks for bearing with us.